This is Library Nerds with Words, the podcast that gives you the word on all the cool, nerdy happenings at Peter White Public Library and the library universe beyond. From books and concerts to search engines and story times, the library nerds are in and ready to show you that being a nerd can be cool. Get ready, get set, get nerdy. Welcome back to Library Nerds with Words, the podcast that gives you the word on all the cool things going on at Peter White Public Library and the library universe beyond, straight from the people who know it best, library nerds. My name is Marty Ackitts, and I'm the adult programming coordinator for Peter White Public Library. And sitting in Mona, that's the Museum of Nerd Art, again today is one of everyone's favorite library nerds, Lynette Succo, the assistant head of adult services. Welcome back to the podcast, Lynette.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be here.
I'm always happy when I'm able to sit down and chat with you, Lynette. Now, we are on the cusp of summer. Pretty soon, PWPL gardens are going to be bustling with color and life. And of course, the summer reading programs are going to be getting ready to launch as well. And the Concert on the Steps series kicks off on June 5th with Troy Graham. You might say that life at Peter White Public Library is pretty as a picture. Yes, that is a clue as to what Lynette is going to be talking about today. But before we Van Gogh on to what we will be discussing today, we have to play another game of Word on the Nerd, Lynette. And you know how this works. I'm going to ask you 3 library nerd questions, and you have to answer them for listeners. So, Lynette, are you ready to play
Word on the Nerd?
Lynette, this is going to be another game of Would You Rather. I'm going to ask you 3 Would You Rather questions, and you have to truthfully answer them for the listeners. And all of today's questions have something to do with artists and art. All right, so let's get started. Here's your first question. If you absolutely had to, would you rather destroy all the paintings of Leonardo da Vinci, or would you rather destroy all the paintings of Vincent van Gogh?
Well, unfortunately, you picked 2 of my favorites, so ultimately, I would not like to have that choice.
Okay, all right.
But, you know, they both have really good qualities to them. Van Gogh, I went to Detroit in 2022 and saw the traveling exhibit at the Detroit Art Museum, and it was just fabulous. Oh, couldn't believe how beautiful those paintings were. Yeah. And so it's a lot of color. He also uses a lot of blues and yellows and golds, which really appeal to me. So I'm not much of an impressionist.
Okay.
You would think I wouldn't like his stuff, but there's something that really draws you in.
They're just amazing.
Yes. Yeah. But Leonardo da Vinci is one of the old masters and has, you know, the Last Supper is one
Mona
of his.
Lisa,
yep.
Vitruvian Man and all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Lots of stuff. And then he does the drawings, too. Yeah. And he's a math guy, you know, and a scientist. So he is really amazing. So I think if you took, like, how would you erase one from the face of the earth?
Yeah.
I think Leonardo da Vinci would be more significant in that he really did more in different areas. And he's a biggie. He drew a lot of religious scenes.
Yes, he did.
And so that would affect even more culture. So that would be a dangerous one to destroy all of his stuff.
So you're going with Van Gogh?
I have to go with Van Gogh. But, you know, it's already in my head. If it all got destroid, I would still have some. And I hope a lot of people would have a lot of.
Exactly. I mean, this is not going to happen. But, you know, that was a really difficult. When I came up with that question, I was like, oh, boy, I don't know which way I would go. I love Van Gogh. And there are lots of Renaissance painters out there who also were very, you know, they did sculpture, painting, and all that. But, yes. But Da Vinci did so much more than that as well. So Here's my response to that one. I'm abstaining from that. I can't do it.
Good one.
I just can't do it. All right. So, well, as you know, I don't know. These questions might get a little bit more difficult from here on out. We'll see. Here's your second question. Would you rather pose for a portrait painted by Pablo Picasso, or would you rather pose for a portrait by Norman Rockwell?
Well, this one is so easy.
Okay.
So, Pablo Picasso is not one of my favorites, and I would gladly destroy all of his work, which someone is going to really nail me for because, I'm sure people love him.
That's coming from Lynette, people, not me. That's from Lynette, okay.
I just have trouble appreciating his art. Mm-hmm. Although, he was an artist and that's what he saw and that's, what he wanted to share. But I do not like his stuff. And if I had a portrait done by him, I would be so insulted. Who knows where my eyes or ears would land? But Norman Rockwell is such, I would look a little cartoonish, but it would resemble me.
It would
at
resemble
least.
you, yep.
And I love Norman Rockwell art. Mm-hmm. Maybe because of the things he puts in the portraits, but also it looks like the scene that it would have painted.
And Norman Rockwell always tells a story in his paintings, no matter what. And I love that about his work. So I would choose Norman Rockwell on this, too, because I really don't know where my nose would end up with Picasso. So, I would choose Norman. So I'm totally in the Norman team on that one.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, here's your last question. Would you rather have a private sculpture lesson with Michelangelo, or would you rather have a private landscape painting lesson with Bob Ross?
Oh, this is so funny. what a fun choice. Well, you'd think, I'd rather be with Michelangelo because so famous. But I really don't have interest in sculpture per se. Mm-hmm. I think painting might be fun, and would a famous sculptor like that, would they be patient with you as a student?
That's a really good question because I think that Michelangelo would possibly be a little impatient with you. Whereas Bob Ross, if you make a mistake, it's just a happy little accident.
I know. He just appears so nice. So, and then they have a replacement for him on PBS. So that man is also very nice. So I think I'd rather have a landscape painting lesson with Bob Ross or his
replacement,
the person. I was going to say predecessor, but that's not right. The person who came after him, or anyone. I haven't really taken painting lessons.
Well, Bob Ross just seems like such a laid back guy, and you watch his things, and it's always like he makes a mistake, and then he goes, "Oh, that's all right. That's not a mistake. That's just a happy little accident. We'll keep that in the painting." Whereas Michelangelo, he's armed. With a hammer and a chisel,
right?
And I just don't think I could do it. But who knows? Maybe Michelangelo was the Bob Ross of sculpture too.
Perhaps. I have a more cold impression of those old guys because I think they were more worshipped. Yeah, and that would make a difference in their personality.
That would absolutely make a difference. All right. Well, 2 out of 3 we agreed on. The first one I couldn't do. So anyway, well there you have it. We have come to the end of this artistic edition of Word on the Nerd with Assistant Head of Adult Services, Lynette Succo. And now the time has come to easel our way into what you want to talk about today, Lynette. So why don't you share with us the Word? All right, Lynette, wherefore art thou today? What is on your mind?
Well, I just did a display downstairs. It's coming to an end called Artists and Their Stories. Don't know how I got inspired to do that, but I did. And I can tell you I learned so much about art just doing this display. Yeah. So it was wonderful. First, looking at the books and then you realize they're all in little separate categories. So when I made bookmarks for them, I kind of put water painters in one section, and the Impressionist crowd in another section, and the Dutch masters like Vermeer. They were amazing.
Yeah.
So Vermeer, and then there's a bunch of them all together. Rembrandt was in that area. I mean, this is 3 centuries at least that you're covering with that type of art. And Math and the Mona Lisa is the art and science of Leonardo da Vinci.
There you go.
And then there's another book on him about Leonardo and the Last Supper. So there's a lot of information about him. And, they tell a little bit more about the painting and his interaction with the whole project. So you do learn a lot about the artists also. Rubens is another well-known painter. And then I found a book on 15 women who, made history and art. So that was like, I don't know any of their names. But somebody does, so that's really interesting.
It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, there's very few women that you... Like, the only one that comes to mind immediately is Frida Kahlo. That's the only one that comes to my mind.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So that was an interesting book. It's called Broad Strokes. And so that's in the art... It's right before the art books at 709. And then most of the art books are in 759. And they go between the different types of art, like the painting, the oils, watercolors, all that. And so there is a book on Rembrandt, and then there's a book on Fra Angelico, which is a monk.
Yeah, I forgot about Fra Angelico. He was a beautiful painter.
Yeah, and that's all religious stuff too, but just gorgeous. So I have 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, all on that one bookmark. There's a lot. And so speaking of Frida Kahlo, there is a book on her that I just put out, but this book was a Michigan Notable book a couple of years ago. Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo in Detroit. And there's a lot of drama that went on in Detroit while he was working on the murals, the WPA mural in the art museum, and then and in other spots. I think he might have worked in a couple of different places. And then she was, with him, not really doing a lot with her art, trying to have a baby, trying to get along with everybody. She was a Spanish speaker originally, and I think she just didn't find a lot of friendship in her circles. There was, I think, just a lot of problem for her acclimating. So that's a very dramatic story. But of course, those murals, once again, they're at the museum
amazing.
in Detroit. Holy moly.
Yeah.
They are so amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
You just someone has to drag you out of the room.
Yeah,
Because,
so gorgeous.
Yeah, they're the big mural, lots of action going on in there. Plus, there's framework with little circles of another interesting thing. It's all symbolic. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and Diego Rivera was, his murals, I've seen pictures of them. I've seen the ones in Detroit.
Yeah.
And just astounding.
Yeah. Well, I just love those. So I also found Homer Winslow. He's a watercolor guy. So some of these names, I think most of these names that I found are pretty familiar. Durer is another watercolor guy, but a lot older. And then Salvador Dali.
Oh,
we have a book called The Late Work. So this the pictures are just amazing. So really,
Dali's work is a little wild.
Oh, it is wild. It's kind of like Picasso-esque.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I like it better. It's a little more concrete than
It's a little more concrete,
Picasso.
but you got that surreal aspect to it.
Right,
That's so
and then
cool.
Seurat is also another surrealist artist from I think this guy's I don't know if he's Italian or French.
He was Spanish. Salvador Dali was Spanish.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
So it's all that European stuff that happened around the same time.
Yep.
So then you go to the American Edward Hopper.
I love Edward Hopper.
This is really... But when I was going through there, I'm going, wow, these are all nothing's really sunshiny and bright. They're all very muted.
Very muted, very dark,
dramatic.
And, and his paintings tell a story too when you look at them. So
very good. I do like his art too. And here's Norman Rockwell. We have 2 books on Norman.
Yes.
One's a little more text and one's a little more just his paintings.
Well, and we were talking about that the other day, and I'm thinking, was Norman Rockwell quite as wholesome as his paintings were or not? And that's a biography, so you might be able to find out a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I didn't find out about that, but because I didn't read this one, but I bet there's a lot more to be told than we know. The great Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel. So this one just has, it has sculpture in it too. Fantastic illustrations in this, not illustrations, photos, whatever. And then I saw a documentary on Andy Warhol. And it was so good because it told about his life and his eccentricities. And you almost could forgive him all those eccentricities after watching, but he was, took stardom to heart. And so
and he's Finnish. I mean, his real name was Andy Warhol. So he's a Finn boy. So for everybody in the UP, I mean, he could. Well, I don't know if Andy Warhol would have fit in the UP at all, but
he would have to leave, just like a lot of people have to leave.
He would, but he was Finnish. So.
Yeah. So and just to take the not even really have talent to draw or paint, but the way he marketed things, like putting the different colors together, and the can of soup has like 50 backgrounds to it, and then doing them in series like that. His stylistic stuff was just amazing. So you have to have respect for him. And
he knew how to market himself, that's for sure.
Yes, indeed. And this one is called Miss Mary Cassatt, Impressionist from Pennsylvania. And so her stuff, I love her paintings. And it's all more sweet scenes. And I never think of her as an impressionist, but I guess the way she paints, it is kind of rough.
Impressionism,
Yep. So those are just a few. I wonder if there's any others that are really Jackson Pollock.
Oh my gosh,
Georgia O'Keeffe.
Oh gosh.
We have several books on Georgia O'Keeffe. Oh my goodness. Just amazing. Gustav Klimt, and I like that kind of stuff. Oh, there's a book downstairs on Paul Grant.
Oh,
and
wow, I didn't know that.
Anita Engel also has a book.
Oh, wow.
So, and there's a lot of their stuff inside the books, a lot of their paintings. So those are really, we're lucky to have those. Yeah. So those are really cool. Andrew Wyeth, not only...
he's one of my favorites. I love him.
Yes, but then his son...
His son
and
is
father, son,
grandson. I think they're all 3 of them. And actually, Wyatt's father was a really famous artist as well, an illustrator. So there's a lot going on with that family. So, and then we have Paul Klee. I think that one's downstairs right now. So there's a lot. Turner, Whistler, Monet. There's a book that has all of them in. So we have just so many books on artists. There's a lot to see there. Some of the really huge books were kind of destroyed because they're so big that every time you move them or open them, they break. And we did have to weed some of them, but there are still so many there. And I love looking through art books because they're just gorgeous no matter what. So, I really love them. So now I have to ask you a question because
okay, and then I have more.
Okay, well, I want to ask you a question because I've gotten hooked on this British series called Landscape Artist of the Year. So they get all of these professional and amateur landscape artists together, and then they give them 4 hours. They take them to some famous spot in England, gorgeous castle or something like that. And they got 4 hours to complete a landscape. And then they have 3 professional artists or art historians judge who's the best. And then they keep on going. They keep on eliminating people. And then they get to, the prize for the whole series is a £10,000 commission to paint something.
Oh, okay.
So... my wife thinks it is the most boring series in the world. Does that sound like something that would interest you?
Well, I have watched those kinds of series on glass blowers and some other kind of, people that make things, not cooking. I don't watch the cooking shows, but it depends. That's all I can say.
Yeah. My wife says it's like watching paint dry, only worse, because people are talking about it.
And then it's so subjective to whatever that judge thinks, because I disagree with the judge a lot.
Okay. Well, so I'm just trying someone who would be on my side. I haven't found anybody
I'm going to have to be in the middle on that one.
Okay. All right, Lynette. Okay. What other books you got for us
Also,
there?
I wanted to... So those are in 759 for the most part. But 741.5 is cartoonist. And I did not go to the cartoonist side of the realm because there are so many cartoonists too. Like we have all the New York Times cartoonists and the Far Side Gallery. Gary Larson. Amazing. Yep. And then if you just read the Sunday papers, you're going to think, oh, there's this cartoonist and that cartoonist. Yeah. And they are artists, but they're just, their genre is very tight. Yeah. And so Charles Schulz of Peanut fame. So this is cool. We have biographies of Charles Schulz.
That one is so good.
It's in 921, all the biographies. And then we have a graphic artist. So it's a graphic novel. It's done in cartoon strips.
And it's about Charles Schulz?
Yeah, and it's a biography of his life.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to check that out.
And so, it's just in the graphic novel section, but it's still 921. So cool. Yeah, so there's all kinds of cool stuff. And then I couldn't resist pulling Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss.
Dr. Seuss.
Because he's a drawing artist, more or less. And so he used to do political cartoons before, in the 40s. He got in some trouble.
Yeah, and a little bit.
And then when he came out in the 50s with children's books, they made a big hit because they rhymed. But his illustrations are just so... not of this world. They're an alternate universe. Yeah. So I always liked him as a kid, and I still like him.
I still like him. I don't care what anybody else says. I still like him.
So 741 for cartoons, 741.5, and then 759 for all the artists.
All right.
Yeah.
So it's just really, I mean, I would read and look at all of those books. I mean, I just love reading about artists and everything like that. And,
yes.
And I've got to check out that graphic memoir about Charles Schulz. I'd never even realized, because I read the biography. I love him. So, all right. Well, there you go. That is Assistant Head of Adult Services, Lynette Succo. That's her word for today on books about artists and their art. However, we can't let you leave the Nerd Bowl just yet, Lynette. First, we have to get a book recommendation from you, something that you think listeners should immediately run to the library and pick up off the shelf. All right, Lynette, what have you been reading that's good?
I am reading James by Percival Everett.
Okay.
I'm going to put him in my next Juneteenth. I have a Juneteenth Mining Journal article coming out, like what's new at the library. And they're mostly about women, but I could not resist this. This is an alternate perspective story. And so it's from Jim the slave who travels downriver with Huck Finn.
Okay.
Yeah. And so it's James because he has a name. James Golightly is his name. And so I am halfway through with it. I love it. But it's all, and I forgot my list of alternative novels. I made a whole list of them. But there are novels like Ahab's Wife.
Ahab's Wife is so
and
good.
That was from the perspective of Ahab's wife that we never heard of her. That was a great jump off into a separate novel. And it was a good novel.
It was a really good novel.
And Amy told me of one called Rhett Butler's People. And that's a perspective from Rhett Butler from Gone with the Wind. Yep. And so that was really cool. Oh, I wonder if I can think of any more that I had on that list. Oh, Circe by Madeline Miller.
Madeline Miller, yep.
And she does several with the Odyssey and Iliad kind of stories. And so Circe is about somebody that was banned by Zeus to an island, and then she became a witch doing occult, and she would turn men into pigs.
Right, and she finally hooks up with Odysseus at one point in the story. So, There's another book that I read. It won a Pulitzer Prize, I think. It was called March. And it's from the perspective of the father from the March family.
From Little Women.
Little Women. I love that book.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good.
I didn't read that. I saw that because there are some websites where you can go and find these. But I was surprised to find so many that I really loved. And I know there are more that I can't think of right now that I have read personally and just have not. It's not in my head. But I'm going to do a book display in December. And it's going to be called, like From a Different Perspective or something. And I'm going to feature all of these fiction novels that are from a different perspective of the usual classic or well-known story. And then they,
And if you're doing it in December, I have one for you. It's called Marley. And it's a Christmas carol from Marley's point of view. So you get the prehistory of how Ebenezer Scrooge became Ebenezer Scrooge, but you also get the story of Jacob Marley and how he became who he was.
Oh, that would be cool.
It's such a good book.
I just thought of another one. The Mists of Avalon.
Oh, yeah.
Because instead of being the King Arthur legend, it's from the perspective of Morgane. Morgana. And she's called Morgane in this. And it's Arthur's half-sister.
Yeah, yeah.
So and, usually you hate her because she's like this slimy little creature that is just, putting spells and curses on people. But this shows her as a real person, and it's way different perspective. Yeah,
and you start having sympathy for sometimes in these kinds of books, sympathy for characters that you never had sympathy before, like Jacob Marley.
Yes.
This book Marley, I mean, he is a nasty character, but near the end you start feeling like, okay, he's sort of trying to redeem himself, and so it's really good.
Well, here's how you feel some empathy for them. If you watch the Muppet version of
A Christmas Carol?
Of A Christmas Carol, because those two old men are...
Exactly. The Marley brothers, and who doesn't like them? I mean, honestly.
Those two arguing old men just make you laugh. Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. But, I love that genre where authors take, like, a very familiar story and suddenly you're finding out about it from a different perspective. So good. All right.
So I'm on it.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that display. Well, all right. There you go, fellow library nerds. That's Lynette's recommendation of some things that you should pick up off the shelf. And we have come to the end of this arty episode of Library Nerds with Words. I want to thank Lynette Succo, Assistant Head of Adult Services here at Peter White Public Library, for stopping by the Nerdopolitan Museum of Art. I didn't know if I was going to be able to say that. Come back next week when I will finally be sitting down with Sarah Rayberg to talk about summer reading and youth services. But until that time, everyone, stay nerdy. Thank you for listening to Library Nerds with Words, Peter White Public Library's weekly podcast, giving you the word on what's cool at the library. The theme for the podcast is Happy Clappy by John Bartman, used courtesy of Pixabay. This episode was written and produced by Martin Acketts and sponsored by Peter White Public Library. Until next week, pick up a good book, listen to some good music, watch a good movie, attend a great event, and remember, library nerds are the coolest people around.